Thank you all for joining us for the Choosing and Being Chosen, How to Select a Graduate Program and Get Them to Select You workshop. Joining us today are Stella, Assistant Dean for Admissions, Recruitment, and Student Financial Services at the Department of Medicine, Erin Rosenberg, MHA and EMHA Programs Director, HCA Graduate Coordinator, Department of Healthcare and Administration Policy, Kiko, Director of Graduate Programs at Department of Sciences, and Melyssa Barrera, Senior Advising, Department of Academic Advising. They're going to discuss how to select the best graduate program, avoid common application mistakes, and stand out in competitive fields. You'll also learn strategies to align your goals with the right school, highlight your experiences effectively, and explore financial aid options. We're going to start with panelists introducing themselves, and then we will open it up for questions. And if that's okay, Cindy, we'll invite you to the floor to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. I was telling your host today that I think this is the third time I've done this. So as he mentioned, I am from the Kerkorian School of Medicine here at UNLV. I've actually been with the School of Medicine since 2015, which is about a year after it was chartered. So 2 years before our first class. And I do work with admissions, recruitment, and student financial services. And so I'm really excited today to share, for those of you who may be pre-med, what it takes to apply to medical school, not only at UNLV, but across the country. And I work a lot with Melyssa over in the PPAC, and hopefully you'll find it really helpful today. So great to meet you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kiko. I'm the Director of Graduate Programs in the College of Sciences. And so I work with the faculty in our graduate programs in sciences with recruitment and admissions. The faculty and admissions committees make admission decisions. My role is the administrative part. So after they make their admission decisions, I work in the systems part of admitting students, and I also oversee funding of all of our graduate students in sciences. So appointing graduate assistantships, research assistantships. We have fellowships and scholarships. So all the financial side is what I handle, and all the administrative processes. So when you're admitted into our graduate programs in sciences, I also help students with the forms. And then as you progress through your program, obviously you're going to have forms, and then eventually getting you to the end until completion and graduating. And so the administrative processes, funding our graduate students in sciences, and I've been in my position for almost 13 years, so I've been around for a while.
Sure. Thank you so much. Grateful to be here. My name is Melyssa, and I'm an advisor in the Pre-Professional Advising Center on UNLV's main campus. We moved actually this semester, so we're located physically, if you ever come see us, in the Academic Success Center, kind of near where the admissions office and financial aid and student cashiering is. If you haven't heard of us, what we do is we advise students that are interested in very specific career paths. So people that are pre-med, pre-dental, pre-occupational therapy, physical therapy, pharmacy, physician assistant, veterinary, optometry. And as of about 2 years ago, we also see pre-law students. So those that are interested in going to law school. Basically, what I do all day is have meetings with students and talk to them about what are some of the classes that I need in order to apply, like do some course planning, what makes a general competitive applicant, what does the application look like, how do I fill it out, understanding kind of a timeline of what happens during the application, and everything in between. I kind of jokingly tell my students there's any question under the sun related to those particular career paths we can try and help with. So yeah, excited to share some information.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Rosenberg. Like Cindy, I've done this, I think maybe 3 or 4 times now. So happy to be here with you guys today. My position is probably pretty similar to Ala's. I handle recruitment, admitting, with faculty involvement, of course. So I'm really more on that system Salesforce side of the actual admitting. And then also, like Melyssa, I do a lot of advising. So I'm the advisor over all of our MHA and executive MHA. And that's the MHA, the Masters of Healthcare Administration, not Hospitality Administration, in case anybody's wondering. Sticking with the healthcare theme today. So if anybody's interested in those, I'm the one you would talk to. I kind of handle that whole life cycle of a student from recruitment to, getting them to fill out the forms and apply for graduation. So happy to be here and look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much, Erin. And thank you all for being here, Cindy, Erin, Ala, and Melyssa. So we would like to open the chat right now for questions. If you guys have any questions for our panelists, but I can get us started from one of the questions that our audience asked. What factors should students prioritize when choosing a graduate program, and how can they align their goals with the right school? Anybody can start us off?
Melyssa, do you want to go first? And then I can definitely piggyback. I'm sure what you're going to say.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in terms of kind of finding that right fit, right? I think this maybe sounds obvious, but it's something that I come across all the time when I'm working with students of, which school should I apply to? What should I prioritize when working on my application? Is sometimes it's just understanding like what are the bare minimum prerequisites, right? Like if there's a minimum GPA, if there's a minimum test score that I need to have, like required coursework, that's like the bare minimum. And I think I talk to a lot of students sometimes that think, well, maybe if they require a 3.0, but if I have a 2.8, but I have a ton of community service, or I have lots of work experience, or I have these great letters of recommendation, like that's fine. Like I'll prioritize that stuff instead because that'll make me look better. And oftentimes it's like, no, if you don't meet that initial threshold, they might not even look at the rest of what's on your application. So to me, like that's baseline starting of what are the bare minimums? Is there a certain GPA I need? Is there, if I have to take the GRE or the MCAT or the LSAT, like what are the scores that I'm looking at? And that's going to kind of vary by each individual school, but there are some commonalities, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of my at least baseline of getting started of you want to meet, there's no other type of like, let me do lots of community service, let me go do all this extra stuff to overlook not meeting the bare minimum.
Yeah, definitely. And so from a medical school perspective, you definitely want to look at, do you want to go to an allopathic medical school for starters, which is where you get the MD, or do you want to go to an osteopathic medical school, which is where you would get the DO? Because they're both the same type of clinical training. You become a licensed physician, you see patients. Obviously, the end goal is the same, but the approach to medicine and the philosophy is very different. And so you kind of have to think about, well, what kind of physician do I want to be? And then that's kind of the same for the type of school that you pick. Is it the type of school that you want to study at? Is it a small school? Is it a large school? For example, our cohorts are 66 students, but there are medical schools across the country that admit over 200. So what type of environment do you want to be in? And then also, what is like their main focus? So we're a community-based medical school. So we're here to serve the community. That's number one. Right behind that would be that small learning environment. We're not as much a research school. Like we do not have an MD, PhD, but other schools do. And it's not that our students don't do research, and they're not successful with that, but it's not our main focus. So again, I always look at it from like a financial standpoint too. This is an investment. You're going to be looking for a good return on that investment. It's a lot of your money, a lot of your time, a lot of your family's time. And so where are you going to get the outcome and experience that you're really looking for? And then as Melyssa said, where are you competitive? Obviously, by looking at the school's average GPAs, for example, here at our school, the average science GPA is a 3.6 and the average cumulative GPA is a 3.7. So you want to be in that range to be competitive. The closer you can get to schools' averages, the more competitive traction you gain. Our average MCAT's a 510. And when you look at other schools across the country, those numbers are going to vary. And you don't want to be completely mismatched that you have absolutely no shot, because medical school is incredibly competitive. This year, numbers are up a lot on the AMCAS app. So right now, there's probably pushing 60,000 AMCAS applications across the country, but there's only about 30,000 seats. And our ratio runs the same. This year, we have almost 2,400 AMCAS applications. We interview 300, we seat 66. So you want to pick schools where you're kind of going to be in the pocket of being competitive because it's also expensive. There's fees for the primary, there's fees for the secondary, so you want to use your money well in that regard as well. Probably the final one that I always tell applicants is, are you going to have to pay in-state or out-of-state tuition? Obviously, if you come to UNLV, to any of these programs, you'll probably be in-state. But there are some schools that you can't gain in-state residency, and for medical school, it can be very expensive. So you also want to find out, even if you're considered out-of-state when you start your graduate program, can you earn in-state to have more savings? So those are some of the tips we give out of the med school.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'll piggyback a little bit. One of the things I think what they brought up is important. One of the things for our program, and it differs a little bit because we're not clinical, but looking for an accredited program. For example, when I started our EMHA program here a decade ago, it was not accredited, but it is now. And so sometimes students aren't even aware because they think, well, UNLV is accredited, but there are certain accrediting bodies for your different industries. So for healthcare administration, we're accredited by CAME, the Commission on Accreditation for Health Management Education. I came from the world of athletic training. We had Katie, you know, when I was in a prior life. So there are different accrediting bodies. For example, for me to sit for a licensure exam for athletic training, I had to graduate from a Katie accredited program. So that's just something to be aware of. If you're sitting for a licensure exam, you want to make sure you're going to an accredited program if that applies. And for healthcare administration, what makes it so important is students who graduate from a CAME accredited program can apply for fellowships. So they are kind of similar to a physician goes out and gets extra training in a particular area. They do a fellowship. So it's the same thing for healthcare administration. Our students a lot of them are seeking more of a fast track to higher levels of leadership. And so a fellowship can be really important, and it's an administrative fellowship. So knowing, you know, if that applies in your industry, and I don't think as an undergrad student, you may know that, but if you can get a hold of a graduate coordinator or program director or somebody in admissions for that program specifically, they may be able to tell you that information specific to the area you're looking at, but just don't overlook that. I know you're probably not thinking about fellowships when you're a senior in undergrad, but it could be really important when you go to graduate from grad school. So just giving yourself that option and flexibility is important. So that's the one thing I would add.
Thank you, Erin.
To add on to all of that, I would just add that when you're choosing a graduate program, because you all have different undergraduate fields and academic disciplines that you are in, I think it's also very important to consider whether you're looking for a graduate degree that's a research graduate degree, or there's also coursework graduate degrees. So especially if you're looking at the master's route, it depends what you're interested in. If you want to go the research route or you're looking for a coursework master's degree. If your ultimate goal is to get a PhD, that will definitely involve research with a dissertation. Master's students, if you're going to be doing research in that master's program, then ultimately your research will be all put together in a master's thesis. But if you're not interested in the research route, because it can take a lot more time and effort to do research and then to get to that point where you have enough data, enough to put together, and you also have to write that into even for a master's degree, a thesis, and have a defense. And so it can be a long process and a lot of work. Or you might be looking for more of a coursework master's degree. So you can look at these things in the graduate catalog. Any university that you explore should have a graduate catalog that outlines all the graduate programs of that university. And it's usually broken down by colleges, and then you can select specific programs and what kind of degrees they have. So really take the time to explore and do your research in time, whether you're exploring a research graduate degree or a non-research, more of a coursework graduate degree. And it all depends on what you're looking for. So as far as prioritizing your time, be sure to explore and look at those things and find the right graduate program that really fits your interests and what your goals are.
Thanks so much, Ella, and thank you so much for all the answers. We have a lot of questions and we'll try to get to all of them, but no promises here. So one of the questions that was directly chatted to me from one of our students, do you recommend doing grad school online or in person? What makes students stand out? And can a student get funding even when trying to do a master's program online?
I'll start with this one. So I oversee a residential program, so an in-person program and an online program. They're similar, but very different. Our online program is an executive program, so it's really geared towards people in healthcare administration that already have a significant amount of experience. So not every online program is going to be an executive program. But one of the things I think I would caution you against an online program, if you really don't have a lot of experience in that area, there may be differences. For example, our online program, we don't require an internship. Our in-person program, we do. If you don't have a lot of experience, an internship might be really important in your future career growth. So I would just say compare programs and see which program you think, whether it's online or in person, is going to offer you resources, networking, and the time and attention you want to get maybe that first job in that field. So that's just one thing I would say. I think you can find quality programs online or in person. I don't necessarily think, all online programs are good or bad, versus in person is, always going to be better. I don't think that. I just think, look at the curriculum and what program's going to offer you the best curriculum to reach your career goals. And as far as what stands out, for our program, a really good GPA stands out. Have you taken the prerequisite classes? We will admit students without taking Accounting 201, for example, but we'll put that on your conditional acceptance that you have to take ACC 201 or an equivalent within the first semester. So if you can get those prereqs out of the way, I love it as the grad coordinator, because now I don't have to track you down for that prereq later to lift that condition. So knowing what programs require as far as prerequisites, I think could help you stand out if you have those done already, ready to go, ready to jump into those graduate level courses. That can be attractive to someone like me that has to kind of keep track of that. And also from one thing that stands out to me is if you're already working in healthcare, and obviously this isn't going to apply to the clinical fields necessarily, but if you're already working in healthcare administration, one of the accreditation metrics we have to track is career placement within 3 months of graduation. So it looks really good for us if I have 100% of my students placed in a job in healthcare within 3 months. We look really good to our accrediting body. And one thing I know is if you come into the program already working an entry-level healthcare administration degree, you're already employed. Chances are you're going to move up and probably get a promotion at some point. But I know you're already working. I know you already have that experience. So I can almost say with certainty that you would count towards having, still having that job or having a better job within 3 months. So that's good for our program. So there might be little metrics or things that your program is tracking, like where you're working. That could be really helpful and help you stand out. Again, a conversation with the program director or whoever's doing your recruiting for that program could give you that insight.
So before my med school life, I actually spent about 13 years running MBA programs in Arizona and Colorado. And so we had a big mix. We had obviously full-time in person, but we had evening MBA, weekend MBA, synchronous distance tele MBA. We had an executive MBA in healthcare administration. They were all designed very differently for some of the reasons Erin mentioned, which is where are you in your career path? So like our executive MBA in healthcare administration would have immersive weeks, and they were all already executives in some form of healthcare administration who needed a degree to advance. So they would come do an immersive week with us at the University of Colorado, and then they would do both asynchronous and synchronous stuff online for a number of months and then come back and do another immersive week. So again, it's kind of how is it going to apply? I think everything Erin said is very true. On kind of piggybacking also on what she said before about accreditation, definitely look at the accreditation. So I did my master's online with immersive opportunities at West Virginia University. So huge state school. But I was 20 years into my career. It was something I just needed to advance. But it was a very well-accredited school. It was a well-accredited program. It wasn't just something that could be considered like a diploma mill. Like you don't want that. And those are very expensive. So again, kind of look at the quality of the school, the faculty that are teaching it. Does it have an opportunity to maybe go and spend a week with those faculty and your fellow classmates? And then what is the alumni support afterwards? Like I have very strong alumni support because West Virginia is such a massive university. So those are just some of the things just from my personal and prior work experience that I would say about online programs or hybrid, either one.
Thank you so much, Sydney.
I guess I would add on to that too, just because that really resonated with me. My experience, I have a master's in education from the University of Washington in Seattle. And very much, I think what Erin said about like kind of depends on your level of experience, because I went to grad school almost immediately after finishing my undergrad at like 21, 22 years old. So I didn't have a lot of experience in the real world, like a real adult job, like all that stuff I really lacked. So me being in person allowed me to have like actual work experience, internships, just lots of networking opportunities, a graduate assistantship. And I got involved in literally everything and took advantage of that so that I had a job lined up before I even graduated and finished that program. So for me, it was really valuable to be in person because I truly had I only had kind of a bachelor's degree in what I was involved in as an undergrad to kind of go off of. So that's kind of my perspective of if you're someone starting graduate school that maybe just hasn't had those type of full-time jobs yet.
Thank you, Melyssa. And Ala, would you like to add?
Yeah, I would just echo all of that. Ultimately, it depends what you're looking for because it also depends on how busy you are. If you work full time, you have a family, and you have a lot going on in your life, you might not be able to be on campus 30, 40 hours a week. So you might not be one of those traditional students that are looking for like a graduate assistantship or a research assistantship to really be on campus most of the time. So in sciences, we're looking for more of those traditional students in the sense that we want to put them or try to fund them on graduate assistantships and research assistantships. So they will be on campus most of the time because we need them doing research in our labs or whether they do field research in sciences. So, but it depends. If you already have a full-time career, you're looking for, career advancement, professional development and things like that, you might need an online program or a hybrid program or a mix or something. But ultimately, it's what you're looking for and really what your life schedule, what you can fit. And it's all about priority and balance, right? So it depends on you and what you're looking for.
Thank you all for the answers. Next question. One of our students asked, how long will it take for the department to take their review? I submitted mine on September, and the deadline was October 1st for the spring 2025.
For which program? Because I know medical school is very different than probably what Erin and Ala do.
So chemistry. Thank you for that answer.
Since it's chemistry or sciences, so as far as graduate programs in sciences, our admissions committees and the faculty generally review applications around the admission application deadline. So if it's for applications for the spring and the deadlines were, let's just say October 1st, they vary within programs. Basically, you can expect admission decisions 2 to 6 weeks after the admission deadlines. And then most of our recruitment admissions are for fall admissions. So those deadlines vary from December to February 1st. So it depends on when the application deadline is for the cycle. You can expect decisions being made within a couple weeks after the deadlines. And you can always follow up with a graduate coordinator of the program, or if there's someone like myself, like that's a director of graduate programs that oversees the administrative side for graduate programs. I'm also a contact person, and I can always look or follow up within the department of the programs. But as far as for sciences, I would say within a couple weeks of the admission deadlines is when decisions are being made.
Thank you so much for that answer. Then we can move on to the next question. It's kind of a specific question. The student states, I am a journalism major, and when asking several of my professors for their input, they all said, unless I want to become a teacher, grad school can wait. Most go into journalism in grad school versus going in with the degree. Is this something you all would agree with? It's part of why I am on the fence on a program.
So I'm gonna guess that you want to go into journalism, whether it's written journalism, more traditional, or potentially, media based like television. So in a previous life, I was also director of career services. So I love this question. Because sometimes I think people do too much schooling and don't have enough experience for experiential careers. So journalism is definitely one of those, like an internship really matters, getting in with either a newspaper or whatever news entity you're potentially interested in, or magazine or television, those types of things. And you really actually move up in journalism with experience, just, boots on the ground type of thing. I think what you can do in this case too is go look at people who are in the career you wish to have. So, whether you really have whether it's a mentor, whether it's just someone you admire in the field, and then go and see what their educational background is. But I have found in a field like journalism, I'm a communications undergrad business minor, and then my master's in marketing and communications. I find that those types of fields are just very experiential. Like if you can just get in and just start moving with the career, you may not even need grad school, as your faculty have explained, unless you want to get into kind of a different role that isn't direct in the field.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else would like to add on?
I'll add on a little bit, I guess kind of similar to what I had said before about I had started my grad program like right after undergrad. And while it's great and I don't regret anything, it also kind of it was challenging, I think, not having that experience going into like a master's program. I think that I understand the concern of wanting to get things done and out of the way. I work with students all the time who are very concerned with how long they're going to be in school. But I think that experience matters so much, and it can sometimes be really hard to be in a graduate program when you sometimes lack that real world experience. I feel like when you have some of that to go off of, it makes the learning, I think, much more meaningful, and you can really apply it to the work you're doing in class and also what you're doing in a job maybe. So yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's, it is worth it to, if you feel like maybe I'm on the fence about a program, it's okay to wait a little bit, get some experience, really see if this is what you want to do or how this education is going to impact your future career and kind of where you want to take it, because graduate school is expensive, unfortunately. And I think, yeah, that experience, or like a degree, is not going to make up for a lack of experience when it comes to getting a job.
I would agree with what Melyssa just said there too. And this isn't specific to journalism because I quite frankly don't know enough about it. But one thing that I tell students that are kind of on the fence or know they need to get experience is you can, and this is again specific to our program, but you can go part-time. If you want to work and be gaining experience, if the program allows it, going part-time, I tell students, I'm like, there's no trophy for graduating in 2 years. If you want to find a job that requires a master's of healthcare administration, you're often going to find that they want 3, 5, 7, 10, maybe years of experience. So if you want to take this program over the course of 3 or 4 years and just take 2 classes at a time, for example, that's fine. And then you can graduate with 4 years, 3-4 years of experience, depending if you have any from undergrad. And now you're much more marketable with that MHA degree because you do have a certain number of years of experience behind it. This versus, you know, I'm going to go to school full time. I'm not going to work in the industry. And now you graduate with an MHA degree, but you have no paid experience. You won't find a job because they do want those years of experience. So I think looking for the type of job that you want ultimately one day, looking on a job board and seeing, you know, how many years of experience does that job require? And, oh, it also requires the master's degree. Okay, well, you know, where do I fit on that kind of that gradient there? And maybe working for a year or two and then going back to get your master's does make sense. So just my 2 cents there.
Thank you so much for all the answers. And the next question is kind of covering what 3 other students are kind of asking right now. So for students with limited work or volunteer experience, what are some ways they can still strengthen their graduate school applications? We have it in the chat too that they're concerned that they don't have enough experience maybe. And then somebody's also asking, do you all think a gap year is more beneficial? So if anybody wants to take that question.
So I will say for medical school, experiences are required. So obviously in our case, you have to have community service in a longitudinal fashion that's good quality, along with clinical experience. So things like shadowing physicians, scribing, those types of things. And so if you don't have that at the time of graduation, we do tell you to take a gap year. It used to be many, many years ago that gap years were frowned upon, but they're really not anymore. The big thing with a gap year is that you're doing something meaningful, whether it's post-baccalaureate coursework because you need to improve your GPA, maybe it's studying for the MCAT, maybe you just need a break before you start graduate school. So you just want to work. Maybe you want to knock down some of your debt from undergrad, or, you know, doing things like getting the experiences needed to be competitive. I would say if you feel like you don't have a lot of experience in the field, go over to Main Campus Career Services. Internships for sure are one of the best ways. Shadowing internships paid for credit to start to get your connections in the field to potentially lead to a full-time job. And then obviously they also have other job fairs available. But for med school specifically, yes, please take the gap year. Please take the time to have your strongest application possible and to be prepared. And sometimes it's even just a maturity thing. Sometimes you find people that just go out and whether they work or do some of the community service. It's just a chance to also grow up a little bit. Medical school is very difficult. It's obviously a kind of a high stress career. And so we do look for people who also have the maturity and the readiness to go into not only the grind of medical school and then residency and then becoming a licensed physician, but just also the ability to work in a difficult area. Yeah.
So for sciences graduate programs to stand out and to be very competitive, for graduate programs in sciences, you have to have research experience to really stand out. Our faculty are just not going to take a chance with a student or a prospective grad student that has 0 research experience. Because how do they know? It's like, how do you know if you're passionate about research or you haven't tried it? And so generally, to be competitive for graduate programs in sciences, you should have at minimum 1 year of undergrad research experience, or whether you do an internship maybe at a medical center or some kind of, you know, a hospital or something, or you might do some research that might not be academically on campus. But I mean, it has to be related to the research that you want to do in a graduate programs within the science program that you're looking for. But really, you know, 1 year is kind of what you need at least. But you're going to be competing against the other applicants that are in the pool, and many of them will have 2 years of research experience or more. So it's not necessarily how many years you have. It depends on what you did, right? Some people can get a lot more done in 1 year versus 2 or more years. Obviously, the more time you put into the research and all of that, it really is like the results and the data. What happened with that? Because you're going to be interviewed if you become one of the top prospective grad students that faculty want to you know, recruit into their research labs or the research graduate programs. And those are the students that are going to stand out, that have the most research experience. The ones that have a lot of data results and they say, you know, I did this, I learned how to use all of this lab equipment and these research techniques and experimental designs and everything regarding research. And so that all takes time. And to really stand out, you need to put that into it for graduate programs in sciences. So for some of you, because I'm sure you might be thinking you might not have the time because you might be already a senior or something. What I do tell some students that might meet up with me when they are looking to apply to our graduate programs in sciences, they might just be starting research. So they only have one semester. And so I sometimes advise them to be more competitive. I understand that you might be graduating this fall, or you might be graduating this semester, and then they have to ultimately make the decision. It's like, if I really want to apply to a master's or PhD program in sciences, you might have to continue your research with your research advisor, as long as you're willing to let, and most of them will. If you're willing to put up the time and volunteer even after you graduate and continue doing your research project or what you're doing, and you might have to just add on that extra semester or another year. And when you feel you're competitive to apply, and your faculty advisor and mentor should tell you, it's like, yeah, now you're competitive to apply. And if you want to apply now, I will even admit you and recruit you into the graduate program. So you might just have to put off applying right away. And even after you graduate with your undergraduate degree in sciences, you just might have to spend another semester or another year continuing your research when you have time, and then apply later when you're more competitive.
Thank you for that. Is there anybody else wants to add on? All right, then we can move on to the next question. What if a student is unsure if they want to get a PhD, but they are considering it, should they go the thesis route? So they're considering it, they're not sure about getting PhD, but they're considering it. So should they go the thesis route?
I know in the School of Public Health, I've heard that from some of our master's students that they've applied to PhD programs, and their lack of a research methods and biostatistics class, because they didn't choose the thesis route for a master's degree, has hindered them getting into a PhD program. So I usually advise students, if you are contemplating in the back of your mind one day that PhD, I think doing a thesis in your master's degree is important, at least on our end of things. Again, looking at, you know, do you have a research methods, a statistics, biostatistics, whatever classes, they might be prerequisites to get into a PhD program. So if you can get those knocked out as part of your master's degree program, I think, you know, kill two birds with one stone there. That's my thoughts on that one.
So in sciences, it comes back to research. So you can apply to graduate programs in sciences with an undergraduate degree directly into a PhD program. You don't necessarily have to get the master's first and then go to your PhD route. But obviously the PhD program, if you're going to apply directly into a PhD program, well, with an undergraduate degree or when you're wrapping it up, you're going to have to show that you have the research experience, because you're going to have to be competitive with other PhD applicants. And some of those PhD applicants will already have their master's degree, or they're wrapping up a master's degree. So they may have way more research experience than you. So it all comes down to the research experience and how well you can market yourself in an interview to get admitted into a PhD program. So generally it comes down to kind of like self-analysis, or you have to decide when applying to a graduate program in sciences, how competitive are you? And it really comes down to the research. And so maybe you're not competitive for the PhD program to directly apply, but then you're competitive to apply for the master's program. And if that's the case, it might be more strategic for you to apply to the master's program, get a master's degree, and then apply to a PhD later. So it has to be based on strategy and how competitive you are. And as far as for sciences, it all comes down to the research. and what did you do, and how competitive are you for whether you're applying to the master's program or the PhD program?
Thank you. Anybody else?
That one doesn't apply to med school, so no. There's no thesis in med school.
All right, moving on to next questions. Any recommendations for social work majors and business majors? Also, is the research required for business graduate school?
So I can probably talk to business just because I spent so many years in that area. And we actually do have an MD, MBA as well. We do a dual degree over here. So we partner with the Lee School. So when it comes to business, you definitely want to have experience. So we used to find that students who came straight from undergrad and went into the full-time MBA, the requirement of doing an internship between your first and second year of MBA at the University of Arizona was very difficult. We'd have a hard time getting those students placed. And so we then had to change our admissions requirements, even for the full-time MBA, that you had to have some form of work experience for a year or two to go into that program. Other MBA programs like evening or weekend or executive will have varied degrees of needing work experience. And the work experience is also really helpful in business because then you'll understand what are the skills that you're lacking to move up in the type of business you want to do. Because obviously you can work in nonprofit, you can work in for-profit, you can work in international business. And then kind of what is the area you're focused on? Finance, econ, marketing, management, leadership. So those things all kind of come into play, and even the company you're targeting, small business, large business, Fortune 500, Fortune 100. So that's usually really kind of critical. For business, I also saw the question about research. Typically, master's in business administration doesn't have a research requirement. It's usually very case-based learning, Harvard Business Case Learning. There's typically a capstone in any format of MBA. Some may have some type of a form of thesis. Now, doctorates in business, which are harder to find, there's less doctorate in business programs across the country. They obviously would be very research-based. And that's usually if you want to become a faculty member in business. Right now, I don't believe UNLV has doctorate programs in business that I've seen because I've looked, because I've considered it for marketing. So that'd be the biggest differences there. And then social work, I think that's another, like, what do you want to do with your career? I was quickly on the social works website, and they do an information session coming up. So that'd be my other advice for like any of these programs, including the med school. Like we do monthly information sessions. And so when I have folks on, I talk about like, this is what you can do with this degree. This is how this degree works. This is what you would need to do this degree. And so any information sessions you can attend in programs that you're interested in from anywhere across the country, because usually they're virtual, mine are virtual. So we can capture people that may not be in Nevada. Those are super, super helpful. And you can ask lots of questions about the major and what it can do for you in those settings. So I would also say like hit up information sessions at the schools and the programs you're interested in.
Thank you so much. Anybody else that would like to add a comment or two?
I was just gonna say I'm also heavy on the looking like going to info sessions of the schools you're interested in. And one thing, maybe this is just me and me kind of being too much, but sometimes like using LinkedIn to see if there's certain programs I'm interested in, what have like sometimes they'll have alumni groups and you can see, well, what are jobs that people who have graduated from this program, like what do they do, what kind of work do they do, and what kind of the degrees did they get in order to do the work? And if that's something I want to do, it's kind of what Cindy was saying earlier of finding someone who has a job that you want and like what was their path to get there. So if you're exploring like recommendations for business in terms of like what can you do with that type of degree, or same thing with like social work, like what do you do in those programs, what are some of the job outcomes? I use LinkedIn to like stalk people and find out like what are people doing with their careers, how did they get to where they are? So that could be another tool you potentially could use.
Thank you so much. Paula or Erin? You guys are good? All right, perfect. Isaiah asked, as a student interested in psychiatry, would it be appropriate to contact someone within the psychiatry department at the medical school for some more specific questions advising? If so, where should I look for their contact information?
So they probably won't respond because they're all clinicians. So they are so overwhelmed with patients. I mean, you could email them, but nothing's probably going to happen. The first thing I always ask people who talk about psychiatry is, do you really want psychiatry where you have to have an MD, or do you want psychology, which is where you can become a counselor in a couple different ways? So do you really want to go to med school and go through all the curriculum? Like, you'll literally do clinical rotations in surgery, family, peds, like you'll do anatomy, gross anatomy, like you have to do all the components to get an MD with a specialty in psychiatry. So is that really the route you want to go? Or are you really wanting maybe like a PhD in psychology to become a psychologist, which you get kind of faster route to employment. You still get to work with patients and diagnoses and things like that. So usually that's like the first question. You can do some of that exploration probably with the career services office to kind of see, you know, like, which way do I really want to go? From there, you could get some experience on if you want to do psychiatry by trying to do some shadowing. But honestly, if you can also find some scribing in psychology. Now, a lot of times scribing tends to happen in ERs or outpatient. Sometimes it's hard to get mental health. I don't know if Melyssa has heard any different, probably not. So shadowing sometimes takes just some cold calling. And again, like, it may be hard to get a hold of somebody to see if they're taking like pre-med shadow, just to get some exploration in the field. So that's probably a little bit harder. Melyssa, I don't know if you ever have any additional advice for people who are kind of trying to explore a specialty. And by the way, you can come to medical school and actually not know what specialty you want to be. Like, if you just know you want to be a doctor, because you will get experience in medical school to make those decisions. We have our own career services office that will also guide you as to what specialty may be best for your skills, interests, and future lifestyle goals.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It can be, I mean, finding shadowing is probably one of the things I talk with students the most of. It can be tough to find because people are so busy. It's hard to, you know, get back to students. And oftentimes it's not because they don't want to help students. Sometimes there's a lot of times rules and regulations in place of, oh no, we can't have someone shadow, and there's just, it's not allowed. But I think, yeah, being open to, maybe I do have this very specific specialty in mind, but I am going to have to experience everything once I am in medical school. So let me just get some general experience and be open to, it might not be psychiatry specific, but I can go scribe somewhere in a different specialty. I can learn something at the ER or at a local clinic that kind of just, you know, sees patients on a regular basis. So that's usually where I point students, is just building some general experience to be competitive for medical school. And then once you're in the program, yeah, that's when you can start kind of focusing towards, this is the specialty I'm maybe more interested in. That's usually how I work with students. Some general experience of, do I even want to work with patients in this capacity, I feel like is step number one.
Thank you so much. And with that, I think we answered a lot of general questions and a lot of specific questions too. But is there anything else would you guys like to add before we end today's panel? Because we're coming close to an end. I'm sorry if we couldn't get to all the questions, but yeah, if you guys have any last words for the group, we would love to hear them.
I would say, regardless of the program, it probably is going to have some form of a runway to get where you want to go. So like Ala talked about, like, you have to have significant research experience. I've talked about how you have to have competitive grades and competitive MCAT and competitive experiences from med school. Same with the programs Erin looks at. And so even if you're a freshman or a sophomore and you're kind of just trying to decide how to get to, you know, graduate school, whether it's business or law, you know, the earlier you can start, the better. But even if you make this decision in your senior year, those gap years can help get you that runway. And even for medical school, like, I run into students who don't have a great GPA, and then they go out and experience the world and they decide they want to be a doctor. And so they go back for post-bac, or sometimes graduate school actually can serve the purpose of getting you to a professional graduate program program. So just know it may take time. Don't rush it. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here a long time. You're never too old. We get that question too. The youngest student we've ever admitted was 20. The oldest has been 40. And we've got physicians in our practice plan who had entire careers. Matter of fact, the head of trauma surgery at UMC, who's one of our faculty, she was in finance for many years and then decided she wanted to be a surgeon. Now she's one of the top trauma surgeons in our state. So just know that if you just stay focused on it and keep chipping away at it, you can get there.
Thank you, Sydney. Melyssa?
I was just going to add, I think, while you're an undergraduate, making good use of the time you have here to connect with your faculty, right? They all work and they're kind of experts in their industry and experts in their field. And I think making use of, if you have classes you're really interested in, if there's connections you can make with the professors who are teaching your classes to ask maybe about their specific journey or ways that you can get involved, ways you can build experience. Yeah, they're they've lived it before. They've maybe done similar things to you to get to where you want to be. And so I think just making good use of everything you have access to as an undergraduate, right? You're paying tuition and you have access to lots of great resources to build some experience, to research different programs, to become a competitive applicant. And so sometimes I see students who don't make use of all of that and all that they could be doing to prepare for what that next step is. So that's what I would recommend is talk to your professors, discover your interests, get involved in things that are meaningful to you. And that often can start that pathway towards whatever that next step in your education may be.
I'll piggyback off of what Melyssa said. I get a lot of students who want to have phone calls and virtual meetings, but the students who come meet with me face to face, those are the students I remember. I can, put a face with the name a lot easier. When I've met with you, we've had a 45-minute discussion about your goals and what you're looking for. So I know sometimes it can be painful to deal with Vegas traffic and come down here and meet with your professors, but it is helpful. The other thing I think that you can find out about just through like organic conversations in person is, are there any scholarships available that the school offers? What do those deadlines look like? We have scholarships for the spring that students need to be filling out in the fall, and you can fill out before you're even an admitted student. So there are certain things that you might not be aware of that just coming and talking to somebody really can open your eyes to. So definitely FaceTime, especially, if you're an undergrad here at UNLV and you're thinking about going to grad school here, there's no excuse. You just come down and see us. We're here.
Yeah, and I'll add to all of that as very good advice and echo all of that to network, not just with faculty, but I'll also graduate students as well. So in sciences, when you take a lot of those introductory level courses, whether it's in chemistry, biology, geoscience, physics, astronomy, a lot of those labs are taught by graduate students on graduate assistantships, because when we fund a lot of these students, they have to teach. A lot of them have to teach labs and things. And so, if you come across grad students in your fields, pick their brains. They obviously went through the process, right? They had to pick a graduate program. They had to go through the admissions and recruitment process. And so in addition to faculty, because I know a lot of them are really busy and sometimes it might be hard to really get their time other than office hours, or unless you're lucky to get recruited into their research labs as an undergraduate researcher. But graduate students, network with them. They will often, be able to give you good advice, good insight. And other students as well. If you come across other undergrad students that are doing research, ask them, how did you get into a research lab, and get their advice and their recommendations. And one more thing, Office of Undergraduate Research. So UNLV has an entire department with faculty and staff. It's called OUR, Office of Undergrad Research. Check them out if you've never heard of them. UNLV website, go to the search box or the A to Z index. They're on there, Office of Undergrad Research. They give workshops and courses, and they have throughout the semester opportunities for you to meet with advisors or to attend these workshops that can help you to give you, you know, some advice and tools to find out research opportunities on campus. So check out the Office of Undergrad Research. It's not just for sciences. It obviously applies with engineering, health sciences, and many other academic fields that if you're looking for research opportunities. OUR.
Yeah, definitely events. You know, like we have an events calendar. I know there's other programs that have events calendars. So we sometimes run different workshops or seminars. And the last thing I would say is be careful where you get your information. Definitely use official sources, schools, national organizations, like we're under the AAMC. I see in medical school that a lot of people rely too much on social media, or Reddit or message boards. And because medical school is so competitive, it can stress you out. Like too much consumption of that can stress you out. And B, sometimes people don't play fair, which is horrible. Like I hope they don't become physicians, but they will put misinformation out there on purpose just because they think they're throwing people off track. I don't know. It's ridiculous, but be very careful with social media. Make sure that your sources are good. And I also tell pre-med, don't pay anybody to help you build an application. Like we are here for free in all of our different disciplines to help you. There are people who do make money being consultants for this process, and I tell everyone, save your money, like spend it at like Chipotle or something. Don't pay another human because everything is free, with the exception of maybe if you want to take a special class like from Kaplan to prepare for LSAT or MCAT. You know, that's a little bit different, but you don't need a consultant. We're your consultants. So, yeah.
Well, these are very helpful information that y'all shared with us. Before we end today's session, then we would like to thank to our presenters, Ala, Sydney, Erin, Melyssa, for sharing their time and expertise with us today. And thank to our participants for being here today. We would like to wish you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Great to meet you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.